Patrick Mahomes, nigga boost.
Hi, good morning all. How are we doing today?
Good morning, we're good.
Morning.
Okay,
Fine, thank you.
Good morning, good morning.
excellent, excellent. So I trust that we all had a productive week this far, and we had the opportunity to look over the information that we shared last week. We had the opportunity to subscribe to some of those regulators or information outlets. We had an opportunity to add the news to our Facebook feed. Did I suggest that? To add the news to the Facebook feed, so it makes it easier, particularly if you deal with countries. So hopefully some persons are going to get their 10% today because they would have read the newspaper and they are here to share. Also, some persons may even get their 5% bonus points today because they would have attended. I sent out one seminar. Hopefully, some of you had the opportunity to attend, and you can share and get your 5% today. I also see that many persons sent in homework, so very good to send that in, and you'll get some feedback next week Friday. And at least going through the next 4 weeks, you will know, am I on track? Is this what the expectation is? And is this registering with me? So very good for the persons that sent in their homework to ensure, we are all on the same page. Okay, so anybody attended the seminar yesterday? No?
Yes, I was.
Oh,
I was able to.
oh, okay, good. Because Ms. Fuller was just going to say, wait a minute, nobody?
I attended the seminar as well, Ms. Fuller.
Nobody?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So
I
Yeah, for
joined a
sure.
bit late. Sorry.
Didn't
Go ahead.
attend that seminar, but I did attend a seminar dealing with similar topics.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll start with is it Sidley?
Yes, Sydney, yes.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Mhm.
Well, I attended a bit late. It started I think 6 o'clock. And I reached like 6:30. It lasted until about 7:30. I learned a lot, particularly about the digital currency, the digital wallets, our country now transitioning into that whole arena and understanding the sand dollar and how the sand dollar is backed by central bank. There were a lot of questions coming in about, does it make sense to have the sand dollar and you already have your card, you already use your debit or credit card, or you have your cash in your hand? What's the purpose of having the sand dollar? And so the answers coming in from what I gathered is, even though you may have your cash, there may be instances where persons may not be able to, access their credit card machine to process your card, or you may be on the island where there's no banking, or the machines may be down. And so if you have your digital wallet and you are able and you have your data, you could just forward that sand dollar to someone instantly without needing to carry cash around, especially, for instance, where you could be possibly robbed if you have cash on you. So it was great in that aspect. Other items that they talked about was us preparing ourselves and preparing the country to accept or be accepting of the digital currencies, because I guess the way we're programmed, or the way we've been functioning, especially as it relates to the banking systems, we've been functioning face to face, and everything has to be, in person, and you have to visit the bank to process create your accounts or process your transactions. But now that we were pushed into having to, be in a digital space, especially since the pandemic, we had to, I guess, adapt to this new way of operating. So they started talking about how, I guess Shivago Line, he started saying how his experience with the bank, and when he wanted to apply for something, they sent him a pin to his email, and then he had to write the pin down and take a picture of the pin in his hand with the ID. And they said, okay, obviously this is you. So, because we sent it to you, and you had to have had this email for us to know that it's you. So that's their way of trying to adapt, because the digital signatures are still not, even though it's accepted worldwide, in our country, it's not, like, I guess, the norm. And so there are still some instances where companies would want you to come in, and they were speaking about how, we need to move away from that. We need to adapt. We need to find new ways of assisting customers to use your digital specimen. Let's take that signature and accept the client's form or their application digitally, as opposed to them coming in. And I find that, when you think of compliance, you think of all the risks. Are you willing to take the risk that, okay, this digital signature is in fact that person? Is that really Sid Mean? So that opened another discussion. Sorry, I'm getting excited now, because it was really interesting, because so many times you go to these places and you call them, and you say, okay, I want to apply, I want to put my application in, but do I really have to come in? Especially with pandemic, the whole practicing social distancing. And some companies are still stuck in that mindset. Yes, you have to come in. You need to come in so you can sign. Okay, what if I sign, digitally and send it to you, or send my application digitally to you? Why is that not acceptable? So they started talking about all the risks that persons may want to take, the companies may want to absorb or not. Or they looked at, okay, if you were a client of theirs 10 years plus or 5 years, compared to someone who's only 2 months or 1 day, the risk in that, are they willing to, is it the same level of risk? So we're talking about all those things. So all in all, we need to adapt, we need to adjust, but then it also affects the way our legal system, or what the company is willing to accept in terms of risk for their companies. So yeah, in a nutshell. I know it's all over the place, but yeah.
Great, very, very, very thorough, Sidley, and thank you for sharing that. And from the AML perspective, let me just give you an overview with the sand dollar. So currently, and we're going to talk about this in chapter 4, where we talk about risk. And currently, the Bahamas is risk rated as medium high. We are set right now to renew our risk rating, and it should have been completed. The date was March 2021, but it has not been completed as yet. The sand dollar is one of the initiatives that the governor has put in place to ensure that we're not too cash intensive, because of course, being cash intensive means that you could possibly come out as high risk. And so in order for us not to come out as high risk, he put the digital currency in place, which is the sand dollar. So that's one of the main reasons that it's very important that Bahamians should, find out about it and try to support it 100%. As we know, some of us work in the Canadian banks. And the Canadian banks tell you off the front, we don't take open up accounts for like the cash and go or the number houses or the Western Unions, because they are considered cash intensive business. So you can't go down to Scotiabank, you can't go to Royal CIBC and open up an account, because they don't accept it, because they don't want their businesses to be high risk. And so right now, because we are medium high and we have so many money services businesses, the government has put a moratorium on handing out those business licenses. And what they did is they strategically sent when they distributed the sand dollar, they put it through the money services businesses to try and encourage them to not use so much cash so it can lower the rating. Okay, so from the AML perspective, that is very important, because I don't know if I would have told you all the story last week where our trading desk, one of the companies that I had worked for, our trading desk was out of Switzerland. We used to pay them more than $100,000 in fees to hold our trading desk. The traders decided to move to the Bahamas, and we had the infrastructure in place to be able to trade directly from the Bahamas, but we needed an account like was one of the Fortune 500 banks, like the Morgan Stanley and the Wells Fargo and what have you. And so we flew to New York and we went into Morgan Stanley and we said, we'd like to facilitate our trading desk from the Bahamas to avoid this fee that we're paying to Switzerland every year. And they basically told us that they do not do business with high-risk countries. And so we said, we're not high risk, we're medium high. And they said, prove it. And later on in this class, we will talk about risk rating of our country, and that our risk rating has been outstanding from 214. And if you remember back to 214, the gaming houses weren't even licensed yet. And now we have the accounting firms and the law firms and the real estates going under the Compliance Commission. They weren't even licensed yet. So all of that is missing from our overall risk rating. And so, they did not open up the account for us because we could not prove that our country overall was not high risk. And the perception out there in the financial services world is that the Bahamas is a high risk country. And so to date, we are still paying Switzerland that excess of $100,000 when we have traders sitting right here in Nassau. Okay, so that's like the net effect. So please support this, find out. There's a lot of information out on Central Bank's website. I had, put that on the list of please subscribe and you get the updates. In my other class, there's actually one person that works at the Central Bank who is the coordinator for the sand dollar. So she has sent loads and loads of information to us. So please read up on it, understand it. And when your institution is approached about accepting the sand dollar, we don't have to, by that time, we would already know what controls we need to put in place to protect us against that risk. And all the way in my ICA classes, which leads me to my next point, one of the questions the book asks, are compliance professionals educated enough or knowledgeable enough to deal with, this new tech world? And of course, businesses, they say, well, like Sidney said, they want you to come in, they want that face-to-face action, but, around the world. And in a seminar, I don't know if this was the same seminar that Alive attended, Alive said, the Bahamas is going to be left behind because there are no more brick and mortar banks where people walk up to and come in person. So we all need to get online, for the new normal is this tech world. And so the book asks, are compliance professionals ready to embrace the tech world, or are we going to get left behind? And I also encourage, my compliance professionals, they were all the way up to ICA, and they were not familiar with the Securities Commission FinTech Hub. And so please subscribe to the Securities Commission. Please learn about the FinTech Hub. Please join it, get the updates, get the readings. And there's FinTech and RegTech. So FinTech is the new technology, all the digital currencies, cryptocurrency, all the information you would need about the tech world, and Reg Tech is the policy and procedure or the laws to support it. Okay, so please sign up because we don't want to get left behind, and it's coming to your institution. And so be in the forefront. And when it comes to your institution, you would have already read up on it, been familiar. And so you don't have to reject it and say, oh, it's too much risk involved. There's no way for us to be able to accept it. No, now is the time to do your research and put the controls in place to protect your institution. Or unfortunately, your institution and yourself will be left behind. Okay?
Yeah,
So-
I actually
so-
have a sand dollar account already.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And like I said, it's really easy to open.
Yeah.
Please go and open it and go to the trial and error process and learn about it, because it's going to be the new way. Because trust you me, if the Bahamas becomes high risk, we are going to have to enforce that, it's only digital currency, and it's not a cryptocurrency. It's different from cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency. Okay, so read up on it so you can understand. Okay, very good, Sadleen. Okay, I have a hand up from Shanique.
Yes, I wanted to speak about the meeting yesterday. I was only able to attend the last 40 minutes. But basically it was everything Sidley had said. I wanted to add.
Shanique, you're breaking up. I can't hear you, Shanique.
Okay, I wanted to add 2 points to what Sidleen said about the
Okay.
meeting yesterday.
Okay.
I was only able to attend the last 40 minutes of it. But one was on the cryptocurrency. It was said that they would not advise anybody to get involved with it as yet because it's not regulated. And then it was on the credit bureau, because a lot of persons asked about having a credit score like how the US has. I know they're in the process of getting that together. I think it was said everything should be finalized by July, but they said if you were to go and try to get your credit rating now, all of the information wouldn't be there. And it's gonna be tied to your NID, just like how they use a social security number in the US. Well, what we will use here is our NID.
Okay, yes, Shanique, thank you for that. And again, we don't want you to confuse the sand dollar. It's a digital currency. Cryptocurrency is completely different. The sand dollar, digital currency, there's the DARE bill, that is the regulation for it. Cryptocurrency was created like from 1981 by a 21-year-old guy who, created it for the purpose of it not being regulated. Because of course, once it's regulated, they charge taxes and fees. And so that's why persons are making loads of money from cryptocurrency right now. So like I say, don't confuse the two. One is digital currency, one is cryptocurrency. And the risk involved with cryptocurrency is that they only give you like a unique identifier number. So I can invest in my number maybe 123, and then Ben Laden's number might be 1234. Okay, so you really don't know who you're investing with. And so there's no way for it, for them to regulate it and control it. And of course, once it is regulated and controlled, then you have to put the proper systems in place. We all know how expensive regulation is. We've seen many banks close out, many financial institutions close out because they simply couldn't afford to implement the systems and controls. Okay, and once it's regulated, that means it's going to be taxed. So the government is going to get its fair share. So whilst it's not regulated in the Bahamas, it's not going to be taxed. But around the world, some countries have regulated it and they're getting their tax. So it's not as attractive anymore because you can't make that very high yield from it because the government is getting their portion. Okay, so like I said, don't confuse the two, but please ensure that you understand how it works. And yes, this credit rating, I know there was some talks about whether or not they were going to use the utility companies. And so I said, well, I really hope they don't let whether or not you pay B, C, and water and sewage affect your credit, because nobody will be able to get a loan. Right now, nobody in the hotel would be able to get a loan. So I don't know if this is like the opportune time for them to pull this, put this credit rating thing in place. They said it's not going to be retroactive. So if you have paid off loans that were bad in the past, it shouldn't affect you. All I normally tell my class, when you hear that it's going to be launched, make sure that all your payments are up to date. Make sure your credit card payments and everything is paid, because you don't want to go in there without, an outstanding payment if it's not like 10 months behind and you can't get to them. So try your best so you could go in with like a reasonable credit rating, not being, having to do credit repair right off the bat. So listen out to it, and they're having many information sessions on it. So pay attention again so you can understand how it works. Okay, very good, Shanique. Deandra?
Hi, no, I was also wanted to comment on the seminar.
Okay, you're very low. Can you speak up for me, please?
I also wanted to comment. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yes.
I also wanted to comment on the seminar yesterday. It seems as though this is going to be an ongoing thing. It was very interesting, actually, that all of the banks were able to come together so people can ask questions. For example, someone had a question of, why does this bank offer their services, and when you go to the other bank, they don't offer that? And so they were able to explain a little bit more of why you can get this at this bank versus another bank. One of the things that stood out to me, because I also accessed at the institution that I worked, was, I think that was Mr. Archer from Scotiabank, when he said that the banking system now is following the customers as opposed to being one step ahead. So customers are asking for things and they now have to look into it, as opposed to back when where the banking system was evolving and the clients had to basically catch up. Even as simple as with digital signatures at the institution I work at, a lot of clients started to complain about digital signatures from about 2 years ago, saying that why don't we accept it, as opposed to having to, because I deal with a lot of international clients, having to fly to see a certain person and have them witness me and have them witness my signature. As long as I can provide certain information and certain documents, I should be able to show you that, okay, I can sign this document, as well as provide my passport information or my national ID. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The whole conversation around following the customers as opposed to the banking institution being a standalone, evolving basically, and just adding to what they've already done based on customers' requests. Also, what stood out to me was the fact that, and I think I made mention of this in the seminar, it seems as though the banking system has become a little easier for persons during the pandemic, for persons that were already involved in that banking institution. For example, a bank that I bank with, I had persons emailing me over the pandemic or calling me to find out if I needed X, Y, and Z, or if I was okay, or they noticed that if they noticed that a payment didn't come off, they just wanted to know, like, it was, as opposed to back then when they were just haggling basically.
Right, so better customer service,
Yes,
and that's what the
totally
pandemic brought out of most of us.
Mm-hmm.
You want to now keep that job, and you have to work to keep that job. So
yes,
what you should have been getting all along, the pandemic finally gave it to you. Yes,
yes.
Great. Yes.
And so I saw that they were talking about that as well, about the whole customer service experience and how they're trying to actually upgrade it, and how they're trying for a national ID to become on a level where most banking institutions accept it, as opposed to you go to a Bahamian bank and they accept these IDs, but you go to an international bank and you have to, or a Canadian bank, you have to provide so many other documents, as opposed to, so they're trying to see if the national ID can be accepted more globally, as opposed to just because we know it's a Bahamian ID and it's something new. So
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with culture, Deandra. You would see that the Swiss banks are a little bit more lax. They don't really follow policy and procedure to the T. They believe that they are smarter than the regulators, and they all say, "Oh, the regulators don't know what they're talking about. We have to tell them," you know. Whereas the Canadian banks are much more stringent. They don't ever want to be in problems with the regulator. So whereas the law says one piece of ID is required, they ask you for two because they put in, you know, in case of human error, and we are human beings and we will make mistakes. And so they are more stringent. They want double what the regulator asks. So they're not, you know, fined or, you know, in any problems, you know, regulatory wise. So Canadians way more conservative than you would see the Swiss banks or the UK banks. That's just a little difference there. And another thing, like what you mentioned, yeah, the banks, you know, should have been more innovative, but now they're following the customers, because you would find that for the ease of doing business, if you don't take on these digital signatures and you know what every other bank is doing, you're gonna have a bank run, and so they're just gonna go where it's more convenient to do business. So, like I say, hop on board or you get left behind. And again, as compliance professionals, we need to be aware when our bank approach us about can we accept the digital signatures. We should already know the risk involved. We should have already done our research, and we should be ready to support that initiative. This is how you do it. Because really that's what they come for, the stamp of approval from compliance. And it can't be at that point when we were working over where we saying, okay, I could go do some research on it and see. No, this is the time now. Sign up to get the updates from the Securities Commission, attend those industry briefings, do your research now, and be prepared and be ready for when your institution goes to the next level. Okay, so very good, Deandra. Thank you for sharing. Ashley?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't attend the Sand Dollar event, but earlier this week I attended another event and it was very informative. It was the ACAMS chapter, but it was geared more towards persons who are interested in becoming compliance officers. And they had regulators there from persons representing regulators and, you know, persons who are actual compliance officers. And what we basically spoke about is that the importance of having an international designation and the importance that sometimes in the Bahamas, we see compliance as, you know, in a bubble geared towards mainly financial sectors. And one of the persons representing a regulator said that, you know, Bahamians should take more advantage of the compliance world. And she brought up the use of artificial intelligence and how she's now working in Dubai as a compliance officer for an artificial intelligence company. And it's so many opportunities for us to, you know, just research and see what's out there and just put the skills that we learn into practice. And it's such a recognizable field and growing field to get involved in.
Okay, so thank you, Ashley. I'll let you continue in a minute, but I just want to ask, does anybody else know what artificial intelligence is? Find out. If you don't know, find out, and next class,
I know.
you don't know? Okay, and so for the majority of us that do not know, please go and do some research on it. And I want at least 3 of you I'm going to pick to explain to us what you would have researched next week on artificial intelligence. Okay, so that's not Ashley and that's not Sidley because they already know. So everybody else. Okay, so I'm going to pick perhaps Sasha or Wesley or Ian or Robin. So everybody do their research and come prepared next week. Okay?
You can repeat it again, Ms. Bullard. What is the research?
Artificial intelligence. And again, all of this is being recorded. So if you miss it, just right afterwards or a day later, you can go and listen to the recording if you miss anything. Okay, Ashley, thank you. Continue, please.
Yes, ma'am, that was basically it. And she was just giving like
Artificial intelligence.
practical examples that we wouldn't necessarily see compliance in, not persons who are coming into the field. So she said even as simple as, you know, this round of skunk poisoning that's going on now, like a compliance officer would be needed in the Ministry of Agriculture to put parameters in place so that, you know, the public is more aware, more internal controls, and so that recommendations could be given to, say, the hospital and the government to how to curb things like this, and how even in the pandemic in the medical field, you need compliance officers to sort of put these internal controls into practices. And so we can learn from, I guess, real life events as they unfold and putting those internal controls into place. That was basically it. It was very interesting.
Okay, and again, Ashley, thank you. Very, very good point, which leads me to tell you about my last class prior to this. I had two persons in there from the pharmaceutical, is it pharmaceutical commission? And so totally outside of the financial services sector. So there are a lot of opportunities. Like she said, somebody's going to be needed in agriculture, perhaps in marine resources. And so outside of the, you know, financial services sector, you will see, you know, there's a need for compliance. And yeah, from the pharmaceutical commission, these persons showed up in the class, and I said, from pharmaceutical commission, like, why would you need to know compliance? And she said, well, basically, you know, anybody who have a good African that used to be on East Street that used to just give you a prescription without the prescription, without going to the doctor? And anybody else other than Miss Bullet?
I am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you all know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You all, so my good African, if Miss Bullet
Yeah,
run out of the
boy.
prescription, I could go right there and say, hey, me say, yeah, Miss Bullet, I know you on drug dealing and I know you legit. So don't worry about spending that extra $50, $60 to go to the doctor. I just can give you your little prescription. So she was there. These two persons were there to clamp down on these pharmacies that were giving persons prescriptions without without visiting the doctor or without having the proper prescription. And I was like, okay, Miss Bullock, I give you all this information and what you need, but please don't shut down my good African, because I can't always afford to go to the doctor. But yeah, that's what they were there for. So if you see in the coming years, you go there, they say, no, Miss Bullock, you need a prescription. Now you know what happened. They already been to the class and now they going all the way to ICA, to get certified. So soon being to be able to do that no more, because everybody is on this compliance journey. Okay, so just so you all know, Miss Bullet tell you all 2 years ahead. Hopefully it take them 2 years to finish and get it up and running. Right. Okay, so good. So very good conversation. I'm very impressed that you all went. I'm glad that you found it beneficial, because a lot of times some of these things are very boring. You don't really want to do it, so you don't have time. But I'm glad it was informative, that you learned a lot. And I hope that you would have gotten some of the names and, network with some of those persons who have that information and call them up on the phone or send them an email and say, hey, I'm interested. But by all means, please sign up for the FinTech Hub at the Securities Commission so you stay abreast of what's happening in the world and in your country. Okay, so very excellent. Felicia, you want to share? Okay, so
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to point out that the point that you made where you said, we thought it would be so boring. And I attended that ACAM's virtual meeting as well. And when I was going to it, I was like, my goodness, I really don't feel like doing this. But like Ashley said, the meeting was strictly about people trying to get involved in the compliance field. When you hear about compliance, you feel as if all this could be one long, drawn out, boring meeting, but they just was encouraging people to, sign up to all the different programs there are and all the different associations to just stay informed. So when you think, like I said, when you think about compliance, you think that it's so boring and you're going to just be in this virtual thing and these people just running on, but it was not what I expected.
Okay, good. Excellent. Good. So I hope all of us, and like I said, with the 5%, most persons come back and thank me because they attended the civic organization. Some persons would have joined it. And all of this, again, like I said, it's for your corporate development. It's not to find boyfriends or godparents for your children. It's for, you to get up the ladder. Like I said, it's 21 of us or 22 of us in here. All of us at the end of this class is going to be qualified. We're going to put this on our resume. Who will Miss Bullet choose? Miss Bullet is familiar with whistling. She is the top of many of my classes. Omega, the top of many of my classes. I know them, so I could vouch for them off the top. I've take some time to get to know Ashley and Sidley, but already I'm impressed by them. So that's really how it works. Okay, so get out there, get to know some people. We in a friends, lovers, and family nation. So make sure you know the right people. Okay. All right. Excellent. Ian, you want to share?
Morning.
Morning.
I didn't attend any of the seminars, but this is in reference to a business article because you said you could mention those as well.
Yes.
Explain
You
an article.
read this in the newspaper?
Yeah, this was inside the Guardian.
Okay, so that'll go towards your 10%. I just want to confirm Sidley and Shanique, Deandra, Ashley, and Felicia for the 5%. That's it for the bonus, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. And now we're on to Ian with the newspaper clipping. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, so
Ian doesn't share my notes.
what'd you say?
Sorry, Sidley, and we didn't hear you. Sidley?
I hope Ian doesn't share my notes because I have my newspaper right in front of me, ready to share this great news.
No, man. Okay, so I don't know if you were keeping up to date with all of the oil drilling talks and environmentalist disputes that were going back and forth between the drilling and oil excavation inside the Bahamas. Persons from local environmentalists and then the Bahamas National Trust in conjunction were adamant on the government going through with this. And one particular company in particular was a Swiss investment group who wanted to do foreign direct investment into the company to support the Bahamas Petroleum Company. I think that's what it's called, BPC. Now that Swiss company is known for having high environmental standards, but due to all of the backlash and uproar from the environmentalists or the conservatives inside the Bahamian economy or society, they actually backed out on pumping investment into the local petroleum company, so to keep the integrity of their business. So personally, from my stance and with an economics background, not all money is good money. And even though the Bahamas thrives off foreign direct investment as an economic catalyst for economic growth, yet again, seeing that we platform tourism as our #1 industry, the negative externalities outweigh the positive externalities. So in essence, I feel that it was a good step that the company did decide to back out because it's helping the economy in the long run. So that's all I have to share from that article.
Okay, so very good, Ian, and thank you for sharing. But it's like you said, the negative outweigh the positive. The Bahamas, we sell tourism, so of course we don't know. We don't need anything in our waters. We see what happened in the Gulf. That oil is still there, and there's no way for them to even clear it up, even though they have this, say, $5 billion worth of money. No amount of money, if we were to have an oil spill, could cure that. Because, like I said, because they haven't been able to do that for years, and that spill was 10 years ago, and the wildlife and everything is still affected. But if you really pay attention, and I have paid attention when they started to drill, and I remember when the guy signed the wrong name, because we actually had a client who used some acronyms in our account opening package. And again, this was prior to 2018, before all the laws have been enforced. And instead of putting a signature, he put MYFB. Okay, so you can imagine what that said. And so, of course, when the subpoena came and we went to court, he said, I never signed that. And we said, hey, is your signature? He said, My name is, say, William Schaefer. That says MYFB. Okay, so of course we got a fine for that. And if you pay attention to oil, when Donald Trump was president, and this again is a rumor. I don't want y'all to say Miss Bullet say this, but if you pay attention, it'll prove to be somewhat of the truth. So, Donald Trump is really, really broke, and he, just has filed. He's a good businessman, and he has filed bankruptcy a lot of times, and that's how he has all these Trump towers all around the world. He don't actually own them. It's just the brand that they have on them. So he built one in Russia, $550 million. So he borrowed that money from Putin. Now, of course, his tactic is, build this lavish building, file bankruptcy, and he was able to get away with that for many years in America. However, you don't file bankruptcy on Putin, right? And so he became president, and Putin supported that because he had no money to pay Putin back. And the deal, what they say the deal was for Putin to be able, they have a lot of oil. However, their sovereign fund, they just live off the money and be very careless. And the sovereign fund is empty. However, they have this oil, but in order for them to make a profit, they have to sell it at least $65 a barrel. And so for his presidency, they were able to keep oil at $57 a barrel. So, because everybody's going to go where it's cheapest, right? And so at a certain point, America said that we are going to drill, and when America said they were going to drill, the Saudis flood the market with oil, and you saw gas go down to $2 and something cents or $3. And that happened again during the pandemic. They had almost gotten oil up to $65 a barrel, which means persons would have went to Putin to buy oil. And so the Saudis flood the market again. So gas was very cheap and supply was, demand was down. And so you would see that gas was very cheap. However, now Biden is, Donald Trump is out of the picture. There's no way for him to ensure, Biden is going to make sure that stays to about $57, $60 a barrel. So nobody supports, pumping all that money into Russia. So I just say all of this to say, just like the Saudis flooded the market when the US said they were going to drill, if they said that the Bahamas had oil and now we didn't need to get it from America, and America would decrease the shipment that they sent to Bahamas, the Saudis would flood the market again, whereas it would cost us more to drill for that oil in our own country than it would cost for us to get it from Saudi Arabia.
And another thing, Ms. Bullard, to add to that, like you said, it would cost more. And personally, the Bahamas wouldn't even have a decent comparative advantage as far as oil production goes. So that wouldn't have made any sense.
None.
Exactly. You should leave that to the OPEC countries.
There you go. Very good, Ian. Very good. So again, you pay attention to your international news, and I didn't understand all of this at first, and then there's like people. I was at seminars, and these were the conversations that they were having. So I didn't want to always be the one who had to stay there and sip my drink whilst they talk, because I didn't have a contribution. So these are the water cooler conversation. I worked in Royal Bank Trust, and these are the conversations that the CEO wanted to have in the morning. So I had to go and find out, okay, what is he talking about? Because Ms. Bullet really don't know, right? And so you evolve. And as you do more research and you're in those atmospheres or those environments where they are the movers and the shakers of the financial services industry, and if you want to move up, these are the type of conversations that you have and you learn about. And like I said, as you do your research, you will, it'll all come into play, and then you will understand when you see news, you go and do the research. So very good, Ian. And like I said, when you work in the offshore industry, this is very important to be knowledgeable of what happens in the economy and in the world. Okay, so excellent. Sylvia?
Hello, thank you. So my my article was in the Tribune. It was posted on Thursday, April 29th. This is about a case in regards to a senior banker that was found. He was linked to a soccer bribery that took place back in 2010. So just to give you a backstory, let's say Mr. A, well, it's in the paper. So Mr. Blazer, he was the, I guess, General Secretary for the North and Central America and the Caribbean soccer group. So they, at that time, were trying to, I guess, bribe the organization at that time to host the FIFA in a particular country. And the bribery was worth about $10 million. And he got 2 million of it. When the investigations started to ensue on, what took place around that time, Mr. Major, I'm trying to remember Mr. Major, who is the senior manager, he was his relationship manager. He managed Mr. Blazer's accounts in New Providence. And so he knew about, the different cases around him, all the media and the publicity around these allegations of Mr. Blazer, but he still chose to meet up with him in New York in 2011, so a year later. In 2011, he met up with him. He received a $250,000 check on American soil, and then he came back to Nassau and deposited the check on his account. And of course, I'm thinking, he's a senior manager. This is one of his known clients. He chose to just deposit, and no one asked him questions at the time. He just mentioned to them that, I guess the story was he got these as a result of fees and commissions. And so he put that on his account, and that was that. Now, fast forward to 10 years later, Mr. Blazer was found guilty. He pleaded guilty, actually, of receiving funds from the bribery, $2 million. And the $250,000 was as a result of this bribery. And that's how Mr. Major got involved in this matter. And despite, looking back on the story, looking back on this case, there are so many ways of, at which point, do you relax the rules and the laws, knowing that as an establishment, you might have cost your business's license, your personal license, the company's license, because you transacted on Bahamian soil, you accepted monies on Bahamian soil. I think those are one of the accounts on him. Coming back, adding the funds to the account, knowing, not providing sufficient evidence for these source of funds. And now coming to learn that, okay, these were a part of the bribery. And he holds his ground that, okay, these were as a result of fees and commissions, but the guy who was actually, who was being charged, admitted that all of these funds and these transactions that I did thereafter was a result of the bribery. And I found that was interesting, especially, with us studying compliance now, with myself studying compliance now, that, there's, you may be watching the news, you may have a client that you're in a relationship with over the years, and then you kind of lose sight of what you're supposed to do. You're obligated to. You're supposed to do your background checks. You're supposed to give an account for these funds and hold to the law, but he didn't. And I find that was interesting, because over the years you may, it challenges me too, in where I'm working, where I'm at currently, and also going forward, to be firm in the law. And no matter how long it took actually 10 years, and now here it is, this man is being charged and you're linked to it, and you might have cost the entire bank's license because of how you conducted this transaction. So That's what I have to share.
Okay, so Sidlian, the difference is awareness. Okay, remember now, we just put in the shell in 2000. Nobody ever went to jail. A person's got a slap on the wrist. You could pay anybody to get away with it. And so, when this regulation came in and the credit unions are experiencing this right now, where they just don't believe you have to do this. We operate for 20 years. We were always successful and profitable. This is just a bunch of, just like when we started with you have to bring in your passport, your NIE, and the people say, but I had my account from 1999. Why have to do this now? So, banking has evolved and most employees are on a learning curve. It was never required before. That's too much work. We don't have time to read. And we can see, as we go into chapter 3, we can see how thick these laws is. We can see that they're not in layman's terms. And if you work in an international organization, I was at Royal Bank Canada, and they sent down Canadian policies and procedures. We didn't change them to Bahamianize them, include the Bahamian law. Well, must be 2017 or 18, when the law changed, and then the regulators, worked on enforcement. The regulators used to come, or audit used to come, and they never checked back. So we made some mistakes. We changed some things. And I was at a very conservative bank. But now there's enforcement. Now there are fines. Now there is accountability. So it's just like an old way and a new way of doing things. Now you can go to jail. And it's serious now because, the CFATF, which is the Caribbean arm of the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, came into central bank and said, nobody's ever been brought before the court for money laundering. Is this just a law-abiding country? Okay, that was in 2016. And so immediately when we updated the laws, people had to be brought before the courts. And now the Attorney General is saying 84 persons are being brought before the court and charged with money laundering, because money laundering was not a predicate crime. They got the lesser charge of like fraud or stealing by reason of employment. But now you see them all before the court, stealing by reason of employment and money laundering, human trafficking and money laundering. So that money laundering, so it was just not on our law books. And even people from the FIU were in my class, and they say they have loads and loads of cases that, like you said, this guy, it took him 10 years. If prior to 18, his case had finished, he might have get a slap on the wrist. He might have paid a fine. But now it's accountability. Okay? And the FATF is so serious about that to ensure that we are charging these people properly. We got blacklisted last year by the European Union because of the pandemic. The FATF was not able to come into the FIU and help them look through these cases and bring these people before the courts. Okay? For the first time, we see our politicians going before the courts. And so far, all of them get off free, one less. And he probably could get off free, right? And then we have, what's the lady's name? Elma Campbell Chase. She asked for her BMW back, which was bought with the proceeds of crime, right? So that's where we are. So I think until she is proven, innocent until proven guilty. But should she, if it's purported that she bought this BMW with the proceeds of crime, her son was already out on bail for defrauding BPL. Now he has a second bail, but you all want the BMW back because the warrant has expired over the BMW, and because of the pandemic, the case did not happen. So there are a lot of technicalities in the law, and again, you could go and sit in front of Lucille or Wayne Monroe, and they know the law back and forward because they read. Okay, and so she could have bought this BMW with the proceeds of crime, but the writ expired. Nobody extended it because the world was caught up with this pandemic. So give the woman back a BMW until you could prove that she bought it with the money that she stole from tourism. Okay, but like I said, we're being watched. So gone are the days where we can just give it a BMW and say, okay, don't worry about it. No. something has to come out of it. But again, like I don't know if I told you all this, only poor people go to jail and only poor people pay bills. So make sure that, and they normally take advantage of very young professionals who don't know the system, who don't like to read, okay, who don't have the $20,000 for QC. So educate yourself and know your laws. And when you take on these positions, know what controls should be in place to protect yourself. Okay? Okay, good. Very, very good discussion. Very good. Whistleyan, you want to speak?
No, Mom.
No? Okay. Okay, great. Good. Okay, very informative. And again, this is what I expect each week for, good collaboration, for everybody to be engaged and for us to discuss the things that are happening in our economy and in our institutions and have that awareness. Okay? Did anybody watch Dirty Money, the HSBC case?
I did.
Yeah, I watched it as well.
I started watching every episode on Dirty Money. But
Okay,
that
good.
was really good. That was
It
really
is
good.
good.
Excellent. Okay, so Whistleyan, tell us what you learned from Netflix. So it should have been a nice, relaxing evening. Tell us what
it
you learned.
was.
Okay,
So
great.
HSBC was this big bank, and their headquarters was in London. But then it's like it was funny from the beginning, because this big bank for so long was trying to build or trying to get a bank in Mexico. Like, the need for the bank in Mexico, it seriously was not that important. So from then, when they was trying to buy Bank Vital, which was the cartel bank, it should have been a red flag from there. So that was me just deeply looking into it. So they bought Vital Bank, which was the cartel bank in Mexico. And from there, it's like everything that was considered high risk to anybody else, they just was turning their backs and turning a blind eye to it. So that's how they started to launder money between Mexico and the US. So that's where all the drug cartels would launder their money. And it's like so much different people was involved, and it's like, it just was crazy.
Okay, but did you see how because normally institutions have a name checking system that flags. Do you see how they hyphenated the name? So
yes.
Ben Laden would be Ben hyphen
Bin Laden,
Laden,
to try and get their wires
so
to go through without it being red flag.
Right. And let me tell you, when I was at Royal Bank, I was the manager of business support and operations. And each month I had to print out, we had like 800 accounts. And each month I had to print out from the system each person's name and make sure that every name showed up on the account, on that report. And, persons just say, Ms. Bullet, why are you wasting your time in doing this? Why? Because I needed to make sure that each name was being flagged. And sometimes when new accounts were open, persons would have spelled it wrong. And then, Ms. Bullet, just make such a big deal out of the spelling and this. But if the spelling is incorrect, when the the triggers go through at night, when WorldCheck checks it, it's checking the incorrect name, and so we don't get a hit.
That's
okay,
right, and that's why sanction is so important. Like spelling something so right on a sanction is so important.
Yes. So please ensure that you understand. You watch the one on who defrauded the entire world, Volkswagen. You watched that one?
Yes, Mom.
Okay, and so they were able to defraud the whole world because of a new system that nobody knew how to use.
That just shows how crooked Russians really are.
Yep. So please make sure you understand the system, know how it works, and ensure that somebody in your operations department checking those names to make sure those names are spelled properly and that they're showing up on the report. Because sometimes people just misinput a comma or misinput one other key, and that name never ever shows up, and that'll be the very name of the person going to court or being charged with money laundering in their own country. Okay, so be very careful, and like I said, watch it for awareness. Even after they were charged, who did they hire? A compliance officer who was not trained who did not have the proper systems to work with. No
But they
type of
never was
support.
charged though. That's the crazy thing. They never was really charged.
They got a
They even
fine.
admitted that they was wrong. They
They
was
got a
fined.
fine.
They paid the
A
fine,
fine
but they
over $1
still
billion.
get off scot-free. That wasn't
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah,
for the things
because
that
they
they were
made
Fine
doing.
that
is
in
about, what,
5 years.
5 weeks of their revenue,
5
they
weeks.
said?
Right.
Yes,
That's
they can make
nothing,
that
that's a drop in the
Like a
bucket.
slap on the wrist. That wasn't
Yeah.
Yeah, they get off easy.
That was a flick, not even a slap.
Okay, but this is what happens, and this is why I tell you, only poor people go to jail. And they got that slap on the wrist because they promised, the law firm promised the attorney general when he retired, he was going to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the big old US of A. But imagine if that had happened in the Bahamas. Carl Battle would have been under the jail. Okay? Under the jail. Okay? So again, that's why I said I watch these things for awareness. Ms. Bullet, just, I want to make this as achievable as possible. But all of this helps, okay, to give you awareness. So I don't want to weigh you down with work. I want to help and give you sufficient information so you walk away aware, and that you go into your institution and, am I really protected on this job? And what is my protection? And is there something I need to do manually? You better do it. Ms. Bullet, it's a lot of work. You better do it, or you could possibly end up in jail. Okay? Felicia, you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. In relation to the world checks that you were talking about, saying if it's the wrong name, then world check would check the incorrect name. We still have that a lot now when people trying to do fraud, where they create email addresses that almost look like the correct person's email address, just add a full stop or something like that. So if you don't pay attention to it, you would overlook it thinking that it's coming from the correct individual, when in all actuality, it's not. And back to your point where you're saying that your colleagues are asking you, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? You pretty much really have to pay attention to these small things, because you're so used to seeing this one email address. You'll just take one glance at it and keep it moving, but you really have to look at the fine print and make sure you don't see a little full stop in that email address, because that one full stop is a completely different email address. And that's how a lot of fraud is happening as well.
Correct. So you need proper verifiers in place. The whole Royal Bank, but just before they closed down, the entire Life Wiki branch went home for fraud, something similar. And then 1 or 2 persons that went to the old Fort Bay, they were defrauded within like 2 weeks. They were defrauded $6 million, and all of them straight to the manager and the account officer. The whole teller lineup went home because my email address is tbullet1800. Somebody sent in a $6 million request from tbullet180, and nobody picked it up. Okay, and so all of those persons, the account officer who received it, the person who verified the signature, the manager who approved it, all of them went home. Okay, so like I said, the scammers are sitting at home in a room, reading all these policies and procedures, reading the laws, and finding out how the bank system works. All they need is one disgruntled employee that's saying this is how the system is work, and poof, they defraud the whole system. Be very, very careful. Okay, Felicia, go ahead.
I forgot to put my hand down, sorry.
Okay, Selena.
Hi. One thing with you talking about fraud happening with inside the bank, I didn't get an opportunity to watch the SBC case yet, but I watched the one with Wells Fargo where the fraud actually occurred within staff, but it was mainly because of the higher up people within the bank putting high demands on the staff themselves to meet certain goals and quotas every single day.
Yes, and that's very, very true. We did an audit, and this has happened right here at the Scotia Bank and the Royal Bank of Canada. We would have audited one of those institutions, and they had a performance a party, type of party, and they have it at the hotels. It's like a Christmas party where they give out the employee sales thing for the year. And we were just there as audit, and just they had invited us because we were doing the same time, the audit the same time. They said, "Oh, audit, can you come to the party?" And we said, "Sure." And would you believe the top person, the top salesperson of the year was out of Freeport? So when they announced that person, we said, "What? The economy in Freeport is so bad," and they had to make, well, like say $4 million. The targets were unrealistic, and that's why we asked institutions to set smart goals. So the person was out of Freeport, and we was like, that don't really sound right. But anyway, it was a party, nice food, nice drinks. It was a live band. We was having fun. But the next day when we got into the office, we had 10 persons approach us. You're doing an external audit, right? Could you all find out how somebody out of Freeport, I right here in Nassau, and my goal was unrealistic and I couldn't meet it. So how did somebody in Freeport? And then I talking about, we just got email after email after email. Please check this. Okay. So we switched our audit up a little bit and we said, come, send us the files out of Freeport. Okay. We have to verify how this person won. And what we found was that, you know, at that particular bank, there are, you go in there for a loan, they give you a credit card, like they have a MasterCard and a credit card, they have a line of credit, they have insurance, so they sell you only go in there for $1,000 loan. But they sell you 4 or 5 products, and then it's recorded, and before the first payment is made, then they close out all those additional products, and then you only pay for the loan that you got. If you go and ask for a credit card increase, they just give you a new credit card. So we had people that we read the letter, say, I'd like to increase my credit card by $500. And when we looked, they had like 4 credit cards underneath them that closed out immediately. So that's what the person in Freeport was doing. Okay, and that's how she won. And so, of course, you know, she resigned the minute she saw that we were investigating her, and went right to the neighborhood bank. But at that neighborhood bank, one particular year, persons did not meet their target. 134 account officers went home. And so that just put the pressure on, you know, the bank. So because we was at the other institution, we were saying that, you know, these targets have to be realistic. It cannot be so unrealistic that you could cause the people to teach. You know, hopefully we have enough ethics and integrity within ourselves, and we will never, you know, when these targets are unrealistic, we speak up, or we find another job, or we go to another department. But please don't compromise yourselves. But we worked with that executive team to say, this would make anybody teach. This is impossible. If over the last 4 years that no target was met, then you need to, you know, look at your strategy. Okay? So it's very real. Go ahead, Felicia, or your hand just sitting down again.
No.
Okay.
But okay, so even if you're trying to make your quota, shouldn't there be stipulations in place that go hand in hand that say, if you open an account, it should stay open for so long in order for that to be counted? Because I can't see how you open all these accounts, but by the end of the year, they're closed. Or you put an application for all these different services, but in less than a quarter, they're closed. That right there doesn't go hand in hand. So there wasn't a system in place that would ensure that certain things, like
Correct.
almost a probationary period almost.
Correct. So again, we don't ever think about these things. We call it like inherent risk, and we'll talk about that in the chapter. We don't think about the inherent risk. We don't think about the net effect of the pressure that this is going to place and what the possibility is. Okay, and so of course we are very reactive rather than proactive. So right after that, they put a control in place to ensure that somebody watches, like at least for 6 months, to make sure if that does not, because you don't get the award until the end of the year. Then you, so we watch it for 6 months, and then we check it again at the end of the year, and we verify all your sales. But again, that's another entire function that has to be carried out, and for all the branches and all the salespeople. So, you know, they had to hire an entire person to do that. And so that's why you see fees and stuff increasing, because again, we put a new control in place. We put a new policy in place. Now you have to pay for somebody to actually carry out the function. Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry about that, but I find that interesting because what I find
sometimes that happens. Companies would they would lean over to profit first, or make the business decision lean over profit as opposed to the compliance or the risk factors.
Of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
so even though they may get recommendations from their compliance department, and they would know the risk. Okay, yes, please implement this, please implement this. But then they look at, oh, why am I going to spend more money to get this now if I can get profit now? Let's get the profit first, and then I'm going to implement these barriers. But by the time you implement the barriers, money's already gone out the window.
Correct. And again, the sales department gets all the funding. Yeah, sales gets all the funding, all the money, because compliance essentially makes no money for the business. The only way we make money is to stop you from getting fined and potentially shut down, right? And so they don't look at that. And so they pump all the money into the sales. They don't fund compliance. The sales offices fly all around the world, having lunches and dinners with prospective clients, and we can't even get an assistant. And so, yeah, that's how it works. And so you have to really speak about compliance and fight for funding. But you also, as compliance, have to strike a balance with the sales department, because they really bring in all the money. And if there's no account openings or money being generated from sales, then there's no need for compliance. Do not compromise yourself, but you have to be savvy enough to what should I say, avoid rather than evade. Okay, and that's how you stay in business. Follow the law. You need to be like Lucille and Wayne Monroe. Know all the technicalities that will protect your institution and lower costs. So you have to be very savvy. It's not just I go and this compliance and I know how to keep the law. No, you know how to keep the law and follow the policy and procedures, but also help the company to be profitable. Okay. Okay, good, very good. I am so impressed. This is excellent dialogue. Okay, so keep it up and we'll talk about it some more again next week. So go out and read your newspapers, keep abreast, and let's engage in conversation and get everybody on board. And remember, artificial intelligence, what it is and what controls that we need to have in place. So some of you I know already, and this is only the second class. So the voices that I have not heard, I'm going to call on next week. Okay, so be prepared to share with the class those topics. Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the book. Let's talk about chapters 3 and 4. Just before we go on, I have an old version of the book, but it should be the last page, or my book says page 23. There's a comparison. It says money laundering versus terrorist financing. And this is a very popular question on the exams. This normally pops up as one of the choices. Money laundering versus terrorist financing, and then money laundering crime. So of course we know now that I mentioned last week that 21 crimes fall under money laundering. And that's fraud, tax evasion, theft, which we call stealing by reason of employment and what have you. And so again, on the exam, if it asks you discuss or describe some money laundering crimes, you will say fraud is whatever fraud, the definition of fraud is, and then this is a case relating to fraud. This is one relating to human trafficking. And of course, we know we have our good, what's his name? Adrian Fox, with the human trafficking case. So that's how you would answer that, giving a real life scenario. With this money laundering versus terrorist financing, you could take some time and look at the motivation. Are we finding the page that Ms. Bullitt is speaking of? Should be around page 23 to 26.
It's 23.
23, okay, good. And it's a chart in there. And so normally a question would ask, to compare both. And so you would talk about the motivation. Of course, we know money laundering is for profit and terrorist financing is ideological. And then when you go down, it talks about intention, the source of funding, the methods, the life cycle. So that's how you would answer that question. You would compare and contrast, and then again, you would give a real life case or real life scenario. And once you would have, you should get full points. And like I said, I've almost every exam I see this question on. So when in your spare time and when you do your research, make sure that you have that one down pat. Okay, just wanted to share that. And so our next chapter talks about, is it the laws, the Bahamian legal system?
No, ma'am, it's international standards.
Okay.
Chapter 4 is the legal system.
No, yeah, there's the legal system.
Okay, because I think, like I said, you have to speak, if your book is different, you have to speak to Ms. Dean about the book. So the next topic you have is international standards?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, good. So we'll go through international standards, and then it's the Bahamian legal system?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
good. So we'll cover both of these today. Okay, so international standards, and let me just share my screen. What I spoke about last week, this is more geared towards the legal system. Internationally, there are many bodies. There is the Financial Action Task Force, which is the FATF. That, you know, these are the international regulators, and of course, you know, they can't manage the entire world or regulate the entire world, so they have different divisions. So they have the Asian division, they have the European division, and then of course we are in the Caribbean, so we are in the Caribbean region. And so of course that'll be like one of the multiple choice questions. The Bahamas is a part of, and the questions are close. So they will ask you, the Bahamas is a part of the FATF, and then the CFATF will be a choice where please ensure that you pick the Caribbean region. If you pick the FATF, you won't get a half point, you will get it completely wrong. Okay, so make sure you pick the closest answer. So the multiple choice are very close. Okay, and so the FATF was established in 1989, or this says developed in 1990, where they developed the 40 recommendations. Okay, and so I'll share my screen, so we will look at the 40 recommendations. But again, we talk more about 40 recommendations in detail when we get to intermediate. But just again, so you will have an overview of what I'm talking about. So this is the 40 recommendations. And when you pull it up, you want to make sure that you have, this is very important, the most updated version. I have a lot of persons who would have completed homeworks, and then even in ICA, when they go on to ICA, they would have quoted an entire outdated policy. And as we go down, so the date, always check the date and check to make sure it's the most current version. Because even the central bank guidelines, this is a version from 2018, that's the most current one. If you pull up the one from 2009, then you will get the, you know, you won't get points. So I had a person who did an entire paper, 3,500 words on an outdated guideline. And it's important because if you look in the table of contents, you will see that the old number for recommendation 2 was recommendation 31. So this would have changed. So somebody did a paper on national cooperation, and they quoted everything from 2009, which was recommendation 31. And normally the old versions come up when you go into the search bar on Google. So just to know, you want to check the most current date. That's very important. And again, these policies are very long. Always, if you're looking for something, you go to the table of contents. And if Ms. Bullitt says customer due diligence, you go right there to the table of contents and you look up customer due diligence. So again, to avoid, you want to scale down the amount of research you have to do. So you don't want to start at page 1 and start reading about assessing the risk and then get down to customer due diligence. By that time, you'll be overwhelmed and tired of reading. And when Ms. Bullitt reads, she's fall asleep. So we don't want you to fall asleep. But again, these are the 40 recommendations that the FATF created in 1990. So of course they were revised and revamped in 2012, and then we see again in 2019 is this version where they had changed all of the old numbers to some new numbers. Okay, and so again, after September 11, they created 9 special recommendations on terrorist financing. And on the exam, I put that there are 40 recommendations as the FATF created this number of recommendations, and I had 40. I had 49. No, I didn't have 40. I had 39, 49, 59, and 69. And do you know, people had the gall to write, Miss Bullitt, you made a typo on my exam and not answer that question. So because we always refer to the 40 recommendation, nobody ever remembers the 9 for terrorist financing. So the correct answer was there, and it was 49. So just so you all would know that right up front. So again, this is an international body, the FATF, the OECD, the World Bank, the UN. They are international bodies, the Basel Committee. And they put out these recommendations, and they say that we recommend that countries, put these into law. However, what happens if we don't put these into law? Y'all listening to me? Y'all out there?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
We're here.
Ian, if we don't put this into law, what happens? Anybody want to help Ian?
Oh, sorry, then terrorist financing and money laundering is free to continue.
Okay, and then what do? They blacklist us, right?
Yeah, then we become blacklisted from the global perspective. And when
Okay.
you're blacklisted, it's harder for your country to get a decent overall credit rating from Moody's or Standard & Poor's, or when you want to go to international bodies for financial assistance or funding, it's very hard for you to qualify.
Correct, very good. So they say we only recommend that you do this, but of course, if you do not do this, then you are blacklisted. And so in 2017, well, we have been blacklisted throughout the years, but again, remember, I told you we are working on enforcement. So enforcement really started after 2018. So in 2017, what they did is they came in and they did a mutual evaluation. And in that mutual evaluation, they found that out of these 40 recommendations, the Bahamas was deficient in 22. Okay, so it was 22 of these that were very deficient. And one of these that was very deficient, of course, we did not have a proper sanctions regime in place. So if you look at recommendation 6 and 7, they talk about targeted sanctions. And so to protect against terrorism and weapons proliferation. So of course, we had to go and update those laws to ensure that our law would suffice. And if somebody were to, not abide by the sanctions regime, then they could be put in jail. Again, they call the DNFMBPs, and they are designated non-financial business partners. This is recommendation 28. And again, we did not have that in law. And that means the law firms, and again, not the criminal law, the people who commit murder and drug dealing and what have you, but the corporate service providers, the Higgs and Johnson, the very large accounting firms that provide corporate services to their clients, or financial services to their clients. And so they wanted to ensure that they were regulated. And so before 2018, the law firms, the accounting firms, and the real estates could just go and get a business license and carry on with their business. They did not have compliance professionals on staff. And so this regulation meant that in 2019, when you applied for your business license and you were like a Higgs and Johnson or a, who was a very large real estate company, I can't think of one right off the top of my, Mario Carey. Yeah, or Damiano's, right. So if they provided financial services, they could not get their license in 2019 unless they had a compliance professional on staff. And not only a one-man band, like I mentioned last week, you need staff. This again was regulated. And now they reported to the Compliance Commission. That's who their regulator is. Okay, so of course the Compliance Commission had to, hire some inspectors to be able to man, the number of real estate accountants and law firms. So what we saw in 2019 is a lot of lawyers show up to the ICA class saying, I can't afford $50,000-$60,000 to, pay compliance professional and put a system in place and hire staff, limit, minimum. If I don't do this myself, it's costing my institution $100,000. Either I would have to close down or I have to do this myself. Okay, so we saw a lot of them saying, I could do this, be the compliance person myself. So we saw a lot of them showing up to class and trying to get certified to be able to, carry out this function, or a lot of them outsourced compliance, like from, there are a lot of institutions or persons that, like Ms. Bullitt, I have a financial services company, and I can provide compliance for 3 or 4 different organizations depending on their size. But if I was to go to like a large company that had like 800 clients, then I would have to show that I have sufficient staff, to cover those 800 clients. So whilst it may have caused that particular industry, the accounting firms, the law firms, and the real estate a lot of money, it presented a lot of opportunities for compliance professionals as well. Okay, so that's the designated non-financial institutions. Okay, and so it was not only the Bahamas. Of course, we got slacked all over international news. The Bahamas was deficient in 22, but we had Switzerland that was deficient in 20 plus. France, all of them. It was not only us, all over the world. I had a book that listed all of the deficiencies by country, and almost every country was deficient. So don't think it was only the Bahamas. Okay, and in fact, when Switzerland updated their laws, my colleague in Switzerland who I spoke with, he said, we had 250 banks. We only have 50 now because, these banks just could not afford it. And so they closed out. So we saw, even in the Bahamas, we lost 17% GDP from these regulations and these policies and procedures because it was just too expensive operationally. Okay? And so another popular question that comes on the exam is the task, okay, of the FATF. Like, why do they do this? What is the purpose? And the book says they perform the following tasks. They set international standard. They monitor compliance with the international standard. They promote worldwide application of the FATF standards through FATF style regional bodies, which is like the CFATF. They encourage compliance of non-FAT members. They do studies, methods, and trends on money laundering and terrorist financing. Okay. When they updated in 2012, the revisions focus on strengthening global guides and to shield the integrity of the financial services system against financial crime, corruption, and tax crime. The changes were a more suitable application of a risk-based approach, refining the powers, the operational standards, and the techniques of law enforcement units and the financial intelligence unit, and focusing on new threats such as financing of proliferation, corruption, thefts, tax crimes, and smuggling. Okay, so a little history about the FATF and these various organizational bodies. So of course they sit in Paris, and you would find that the prime ministers or the presidents of various countries who sits on these boards, right? And so for a very long time, we were the competition, we were considered a tax haven. And so we had a very strong offshore banking center where a lot of persons, they did try to evade taxes in their country. And so they did come here and open up accounts with us. However, FACA and CRS has stopped that. And so there's no use to, for trying to evade taxes, even if you have an offshore account. We, through FACA and CRS, we report you back to your country, and then your country collects their tax. Okay, so I lost my train of thought now. What I was talking about before, I talked about FACA and CRS. Okay, so it was felt that, because we are the competition and, by successive governments, the PLP as well as the FNM, Ryan Pinder did a lot of work before Trancrest came in. And, over the years, even though we would have met their deadlines, they would have blacklisted us. So, at one point, even though we were deficient in 22, we still felt that, hey, other countries around the world are deficient and they're not getting blacklisted. Why are we always getting blacklisted? Is you're trying to wipe out our banking services sector or our financial services sector, because essentially, our clients were from Europe. And so, they had a lot of repatriation. If you bring your money back home, we'll give you this credit, or we'll give you financing or a special credit, rating, or a special interest rate. So they had various initiatives trying to repatriate the money back to, say, to Canada, to France, and what have you. And so the government felt, like I said, both the BLP and F&M felt that, the more regulation we put in place, no matter what we do, they are going to blacklist us. So it makes no sense. And so, Ryan Pinder was a little bit more reserved. But in 2018, we had, I think, until December to be able to put our tax regime in place. And we signed various Ts with countries saying, yes, if your person is from Spain and they have an account with us, we will report you to Spain and Canada and anywhere in the world. And we had met their deadline. However, they have two bodies. They have a technical division and they have a division that blacklists you. And apparently our information was sent to the technical division. However, it did not reach the division. So it was an error on their part that blacklisted you. And subsequently, even though we had done what we were supposed to do, we were blacklisted. And so Peter Turncrest lashed out at them and said, listen, whatever we do, you're working against us. It makes no sense. And so other countries are not being blacklisted. So this is intentional. And because he lashed out at us, they apologized and they said, before we blacklist you again, we will advise you and do proper due diligence and give you a time frame to respond. And if you respond within that time frame, then we won't blacklist you, because of course, every time we get blacklisted, like Ian said, it's reputational risks. People don't want to do business with us and what have you. And so this was now the promise that they made to us. And they took us off the blacklist. In 2020, we had satisfied most of our recommendations. The 22 that were deficient, we became largely compliant. I think we have 10 now outstanding. 30 of them are largely compliant. 10 of them are not. Need some odds and ends and pieces. They were supposed to come in May of 2020 to work with the FIU and ensure persons are being brought before the court, and work with the central bank and the other regulators. However, due to the pandemic, they were not able to come, and they subsequently blacklisted us again. The European Union blacklisted us because they weren't able to come in and confirm if our action plan for taxes was, fully rolled out. So because of that, the Attorney General got very upset with them and said, listen, y'all ain't working with us. This reputational risk for the country. It's costing us a lot of money. Every time that you say we're blacklisted. And so now we have a presence. So to combat this, they came up with a plan, and now Carl Bethel is now the chairman of the CFATF. So he will make the decision on who is blacklisted. And of course, he will not blacklist the Bahamas unless he has no other choice. So when they submit, I guess, papers or they correspond, they have their meetings and say Bahamas should be blacklisted, he is now at the helm. And so that has been very important, what we have learned. We have Keva Bethel at the UN. We have another person, I think, with the OECD, but that's what really happens. We did not have a seat at the table. We did not have somebody advocating on behalf of the Bahamas. So when they say blacklist the Bahamas, I from Europe, I from Canada, I from France. I once they don't say France getting blacklisted, I don't have no city. So now we have a seat at the table, and so that's very important. And as future leaders, I hope that this is just the beginning for most of us, that we do venture out into government, executive levels, or to be the next government, or to run for office, or to, sit on some of these bodies so the Bahamas could have a seat at the table and make recommendations and advocate for what's in the best interest of our country. Because, like I said, their prime minister and their president, they have seats on all of those bodies strategically to protect their country, and we need to do the same. Okay?
Willard.
Yes.
Well, adding what you say too, right? Most of these global bodies too, they're headed by G20 nations or countries. So, I mean, that's only expected that we would get blacklisted, or the whiplash they give, low income or developing nations, because everybody's not gonna have a seat at the table of development. So, I mean, it's sort of expected in essence that you would get, unfair treatment in essence.
Correct. But like I said, but there are positions out there. There are positions out there where we can, try to attain. Right? And so, like I said, we are the future leaders. So just have it in your, in your head. This is, some of the next steps that we need to take. Because before we saw the constant blacklisting without, with the lack of respect of even letting us know, and the reputational risk would cause us, I think the Attorney General felt like he had no choice but to become the chairperson or try and get a position there when it became available. Most Bahamians ain't even thinking about it. They think, oh, that's the UN, oh, that's the, we could just take whatever they give us. No, we could take a stand and be a part of the decision-making body. Okay, and essentially that's how we protect ourselves. Okay, so good. I said a lot. Yeah. Thank you for that feedback, Ian. Do we understand who the FATF is? Do we understand the CFATF and how it works? We have a visual of the 40 recommendations. And the next chapter starts off talking about risk and recommendation 1. So I'm just going to scroll down, and we're going to look at recommendation 1, and you can read it from the screen. But essentially what it says is countries should assess their risks and then put in controls to mitigate that risk. Okay, so that's a lot of writing, but that's essentially what it says. So again, I want you to have a visual. So when people say, well, recommendation 1 says this, you'll know what recommendation 1 is. You would be familiar with the 40 recommendations, and you know where to find them. Okay, so let's talk about the IMF. Again, the IMF was established in 1945 as a specialized agency of the United Nations within the Bretton Woods Accord. The IMF was designed to avoid a reoccurrence of the problem of the Great Depression. Its focus was on overseeing the international monetary system, preventing crisis by encouraging sound economic policies, and providing short-term loans to help with the balance of payment problems. Okay, and again, another international body. When the IMF, and they are working together, so sometimes the IMF will come in, the OECD will come in, the people responsible for the financial sector assessment program will come in. So there were a few representatives in, and if you look at the back of this, it says on page 30, there's a process timeline. And so this book is from 2018 when they came in, and they came in December. And again, to shed some light on, we always see the regulator internationally as non-supportive, always blacklisting us, not working with us. But I have a positive story with the IMF. So in 2018, they came in to carry out this financial sector assessment. They sat with the central bank. Whilst they were here, they looked at our disaster recovery now. So let's go back to December 2018. Okay, so in December 2018, they came in, they said, your disaster relief plan has to be updated. And of course, we said, okay, fine. And they said, put an action plan in place. Before we leave, you must update it. And so the government said, because they're working on enforcement, the government did not want to get a fine, and they did not again, this was a regulator. They wanted to satisfy some of the requests that they had. And so they said, okay, fine, we will work on the disaster relief plan. And so they said it's going to be threefold. And again, pay attention to this, please. I know I'm talking a lot. You might be tired of my voice right now, but give me some feedback right after this. And this again is one of the exam questions. So they said we're going to put in a 3-tier system, and that system is going to be, we're going to pay the disaster recovery insurance. Now it's $900,000, and successive governments did not, they stopped paying it because we had Hurricane Joaquin, and they said it was in a category 5. Then we had Hurricane Matthew, and they said we didn't have excessive rain. So that insurance has never paid us because there's always a reason why we cannot get paid. And so we felt that we could put that $900,000 to better use. So we did not pay that insurance. Okay, but we are going to, as a part of our action plan, the Bahamas is going to pay that $900,000 to the insurance to, in case we do have a category 5 or excessive rain, that we will get paid. Then we have dormant funds that to the sum of $88 million. And normally, you know, you could come back anytime of after central bank been holding some of that money for 20 and 30 years. So what we're going to do is put a law in place where we're going to cap how long we're going to hold that money. And so institutions are allowed to hold dormant funds for 7 years. If you cannot contact that client, then you send that money on to the central bank. And so the central bank now will hold it for 3 years. After 3 years, there's no coming back for that money. So this $88 million is going to go in that our consolidated fund. And because that money has, most of it has been more than 10 years, we now have $44 million that we will put in the event we have, put in place in the event that we have a hurricane with excessive rain, and it's a category 5, even though we haven't had this from 1920 something. Then we are going to secure a line of credit with the IDB. Okay, and so that's our action plan. And so the IMF said, okay, put it into law, seal it, and we will consider that, yeah, disaster relief fund. This was in December 2018. Can anybody tell me what happened in September 2019?
Hurricane Dorian.
Dorian.
Very good, very good. So again, this was where we was acted swiftly, 6-7 months before it happened. And like I said, successive governments, of course, if you go back to the House of Assembly, Alcides was like, it's a waste of money. Every time we pay this insurance, they say, no, this is, you know, this is some condition that we didn't meet. Okay. But again, we wanted to satisfy the IMF before they left. And therefore we put the disaster relief in place. And so they checked that off as a condition that had been met. 6-7 months later, we had a Hurricane Dorian, category 5, excessive rain. So we were able to get, I think, $11 million for the category 5 and $14 million for the excessive rain. Then those dormant funds, the $44 million that we had put aside, we were able to use that. Then we were able, because again, we had already secured the loan from the IDB in the event something like this ever happened. We never expected to use it. Lo and behold, all of it was in place. Okay? And so this is very important because there's something called CP, outside of country rating, where your country could be seen as high, medium, or low. And remember, Morgan Stanley did not open the account with us because we were perceived to be high risk. There's something called perception index, corruption perception index, and it's called a CPI index. And that comes out from Transparency International. In 2017, Puerto Rico had Hurricane Maria, and Puerto Rico is a U.S. outlying country, but Donald Trump did not support Puerto Rico. So they had a corruption perception index of 66 before Hurricane Maria, and the index runs anything below 45 is considered high risk. And you would see that countries say we don't do business with anybody over 45. And so you could go on Transparency International and see this perception index. So this is important as well. And at that time when that happened, I used to do payrolls for Puerto Rico. And last week, Friday, I did the payroll. This week I was doing the payroll. And do you know that our corresponding bank said Puerto Rico's corruption perception index has been changed. We can no longer put through this payment. So those people did not get paid that week. And so I pulled up the index and I looked and they didn't even have a rating because the the president did not support them and they were desperate. They didn't have electricity. They felt like the corruption had gone up too high and the MPs were being, would take money from drug dealers or money launderers or what have you, anybody to get their, country back in order. And so the other day after Dorian, when, our prime minister, he held a seminar for people to give donations and people were saying, oh, it's a sham and this and that. I just watched the perception index to see if he did not get help or even a loan or something to help, what would happen to us? But our one only dropped one notch, thankfully. Okay, what happened to Puerto Rico did not happen to us. Okay, and then again, I used to do payroll and school fees for a client out of Madagascar and a client out of Russia. And again, 1 week, I was told we no longer accept payments for clients with out of countries with a CPI index lower than 30. So even though high risk was 45, they gave like a 15% leeway. But if you were below 30, they don't do business with you. Madagascar, Venezuela, Russia, what have you. And so what do those countries do? What do my clients do who they don't even live in Madagascar anymore and they can't operate their businesses? The other day when there was the bombings in Lebanon, the Lebanese president or prime minister spoke out against Netanyahu, and Netanyahu and Donald Trump are very close. So of course, just because he said we believe it was a terrorist attack from Israel, they got sanctioned heavily. And I have a Lebanese client that lives in Spanish Wells. He wanted to go get groceries. He wanted me to pay his car insurance and his house insurance. And because even though his address says Spanish Wells, Bahamas, because his passport and everything was Lebanese, they stopped it. They say Lebanon is now sanctioned. You cannot do that transaction. Okay, so what does the customer do? Okay, so that's the net effect, just so you understand how it works.
So Ms. Bullitt,
yes.
This is why I feel like politics and government official business is like a tricky business. So how is corruption supposed to ever stop? Would they consider corruption? Because now you leave the small man to borrow money because they're in desperate need from people who you all consider terrorists and, criminals and what's not.
Yeah, but you can't borrow the money. You have to.
So what is that man? What is that person or that country supposed to do? That's like everybody turning their backs on you, and you have nothing else to do.
Okay, so the IMF is there, would lend you money, the IDB. There are various honest ways or legal ways to borrow money and get your government back on track. But you have to know that. And if you just show up to work every day and you do not do research like most of us, and you don't know what the resources are out there to help you, then you suffer, or then you go the illegal or the easy way.
It's still you making the little man suffer more than they already suffering.
Yeah, but Wesley, there are many opportunities out there. Many opportunities. Let me just say, this is and I attribute this to the government as well. This is the same process. This for the last 2 weeks, I have been helping persons to get business licenses, right? And because there are many grants out there. And so one person who I helped, they brought all their information to me. We got the business license within a week. 2 weeks later, they said, we don't want to do business with you. We don't want to do business with you. And so we And I applied for a grant for them and they got approved. After they told the people, oh my God, Miss Bullet happy and we got approved, everybody showed up to my door. One person I had to run behind them for a whole week for a passport. The next one for an NIB class. The next one had to listen to a seminar, they didn't listen. It's just so many, like, so the other one person already straight and they got a grant, not even a loan. You know what I mean? A grant with this, they don't even have to pay back, inject it into their business. And like I say, that's the same way, like the government has to go there and find what the honest and the legal opportunities are that is offered to them and then apply. Yeah, it is a tedious process. You know, it took a month for the person to get approved. One other person I worked with, it took 5 months. It didn't matter, but they got the help that they needed. But a lot of people are not educated. A lot of people can't even do these things. I mean, it is a tedious process, but they can't do it themselves. And when they find somebody to help them, they frustrate the person out of helping them. Okay, and so education is key. Keeping current is key. Being into international, the opportunities may not be local. They must be international. Are we on any international bodies? Are we out there doing research? No. We like to be on TV and talk about what the possibilities are. And I always say, you know, we talk a lot. Ms. Bullet is talk a lot. Do we any action? Do we get anything done? Meeting. In fact, I almost got fired because I said, can I not attend another meeting? Because we've been to the last 10 meetings and these are the meetings, minutes from these meetings and nothing has been done. I don't have time for another meeting. I don't have time for another talk session. Okay, so we have to get serious. There are opportunities out there. There are other countries, every time we get a new law, we add a copy in the law from the Netherlands or Luxembourg or Cayman. So look at what they do, find out, and then coming in because they surely successful. How? Right? Find out. There are going to be roadblocks, but it's not unachievable. It just requires a lot of work. And that's what we don't like. We don't like a lot of work. We like the easy route that's at our fingertips.
Ms. Bullet.
Yes.
You see how you mentioned about them going out there to international bodies, the government, and getting money, right? Well, I mean, that seems to be like a go-to tactic for the Bahamian government, like for everything, basically. I mean, like you said, it's hard work and eventually you'll get it, but at the same time, running consecutive budget deficits isn't really, you know, attractive or appealing per se. So at some point, your government as a whole is gonna have to have some fiscal stability to some degree or some self-efficiency, you know, where you could try stray away from, you know, all of that borrowing, because it's only going to get projected upon, you know, new generations to pay off the existing deficit that you're running, you know?
I agree 100%. So let's strategically sit down and think about how do countries make money. Let's look at the Netherlands. Okay, they don't even have corona cases. All their citizens get a stipend from their natural resources. Do we have natural resources?
Are you talking about the Netherlands or Norway, Miss Bullet?
One of them. I think
Yeah.
I mean the Netherlands too.
All right.
Yeah, but between Netherlands and Norway, one of them, they don't have a deficit. Morocco doesn't have a deficit. They give their citizens $3,000 a month from natural resources. Okay, so that's our problem. We say that we are a socialist nation, but one family collects all the money from our natural resources. Why? Look what we've done to Freeport. The Hawkesville Creek Agreement was for 99 years. It expired, and we signed it right back into it, even though we see how bad the citizens of Freeport have been doing outside of the port for many years. But we signed it again. We brought on gaming. Every country has a national lottery. Why did we give the lottery to 7 persons? That's capitalism, that's not socialism. Okay, so there 3 opportunities right there for the government to make money, and we throw it away. We have an illegal immigration problem. Why? Canada is calling for people. The more people you have, the more tax you collect. And that's why they can call for people. So we have an immigration problem that we cannot control. However, are we taxing them? No, we let them come in, they use the hospital, they use the education, and anything else. But for the first time in 2015, was it 2015 when we implemented that? Everywhere else, you know, the only way the country makes the majority of the money is from taxes. So almost every industry where a country could make money, we can't see it happening right on our doorsteps or at our neighbors, and we don't know how to implement it. I understand that taxes have to be paid in order for a country to operate. So I don't have a problem paying that. What my problem is that I don't want to fall in a pothole every 5 seconds. I want to be able to go to Princess Margaret Hospital and be served within an hour. I don't want to have to sleep there before I'm served. I would like my children to go to government school and feel comfortable whilst they're there. Then I will pay every single tax happening. But people don't like to pay taxes, particularly rich people, because the government does not put the money where it's supposed to go. What is a consolidated fund? What the hell is what is a consolidated fund? What is it?
I don't think we ever got the explanation on that.
Nobody could account for. Sorry?
Nice. I don't think we ever got the explanation on that. We so patiently
okay. Every time I hear the consolidated fund, I go crazy. Do we not have a Ministry of Finance? Do we not have certified accountants there to tell you how what the money is and where it's allocated and what it's for? A consolidated fund? I don't want to hear it again. There has to be itemization and accountability. Okay, so that's where our problem is. Our always for us to make money, we seem to not even take one and make sense of it. So, yeah. Okay, Miss Bullock, you calm down now. You calm down. Okay, let me drink some water. Any comments or concerns? But you all understand where I'm coming from?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so tax the that's the only way. Or we will borrow till we can't borrow no more. Okay.
And with that too,
sorry.
With that too, the tax base is like so narrow here because we have a regressive taxation regime. Because the burden of the taxes are on the typical Bahamian, the poor man, as opposed to having a proportional, a progressive taxation regime, or even a proportional one. So I don't know how much money the government expects to keep absorbing from lower income Bahamians if you already have nothing and you're done financially crippled. But anyway, that's what they put in power.
Okay, and my next problem is, everywhere in the world, everywhere I've traveled, I've seen a little China, a little Haiti, or some Caribbean nations. There's no little Bahamas anywhere. We don't work together, and we hate our foreigners, but we could learn a lot from them. If you go on every Friday when there's payday, the cash and go in the Western Union line is out of the door. And what we could learn from the Chinese is the Chinese lives on 20% and they save 80. Okay, and they network and they work together and they ensure that the next Chinese family is going to come here. Are we taxing them? No. We living on 80%. We don't save 1%. When the Chinese they order a trailer load of bread, a 45-foot container. It goes to every store in the Bahamas. Who in their network? Okay, and so they can sell bread the cheapest. People are going to go where the same bread is the cheapest. Can we do that as Bahamians? No, it's Black Crab syndrome. We can't work together. We do not network. I always tell my the persons in my class, if you're hanging out on the weekends, there are 4 weekends in the month. 1 week, those people that you hang out with, please invest. Think of a way to make money. Think of a way we could become the future leaders, but every week we partying. One weekend, you don't have to party. When you get together with your group, build your network. Make sure there's an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, a banker, anybody who can help you, like-minded people, a business person that want to get to the next step and, you know, ready to work. We need to work together. We have 1 million what ifs if why we can make it if we work together. Okay? And then I asked them, 1 week, when you get paid, 1 week of the month, can you save 80%? One paycheck. You may get 2, you may get 4. Could you save 80% and live on 20? No, nobody could do it. Nobody could take a sandwich to work. We have to pay $15 for a plate of food. Nobody could carpool because I don't like her and she's talked too much. We have a million reasons why. But on the weekend, the people line up I never been to Western Union or Cash and Go and the line wasn't out the door. They send in that 80% of the country because we are not taxing them properly. But these things, I mean, you could see it with, you know, the natural eye and nobody doing nothing about it. You cannot fix the immigration problem, so therefore, tax the people, fix the hospital, fix the schools, and be like Canada. Okay? Or put a more, these people come here for a better way of life. They left their families back in Africa, back in China. They send in that money back home for their family to survive. Okay, so we need to fix this. And we just complain, and then I think this political stuff, tell them out of. Did we have some people who could get some things done? Anybody? No, just talk. Okay. Okay, so we understand the IMF and the FATF.
Yeah, what you're saying is very true because, like, I've spoken to people who do domestic work, and they really don't like staying here. You know, they just come here, like you say, to make money, and they send all of their money back home, and then they go home for like 4 to 6 months to stay with their family, and then when the money runs low again, they come back here to work.
Yeah, but see, Canada calling people because they guarantee it.
Economy.
Yeah, see, Canada calling people because they guarantee their tax rates 50 to 30%, and then you gotta live. You have to eat and you have to pay overhead, and so Canada guaranteed 50% of that person's salary. So you could send that 50% home, but 50% could stay in Canada.
Ms. Berlin, we are now talking about the importance of taxes, but the political party selling this thing to us that they're going to lower VAT. And to the people who I listen to and they say, no, yeah, that's the way to go. We already in debt now. So when they lower VAT, then what?
Listen, they can't do that, first of all.
And so the people who I hear going along with it, I'm like, y'all, listen.
First of all, you know, no matter who wins the government, VAT has to increase by 2022, I think, or 2024.
Exactly.
You know, when you hear these people doing political things, or you always have to know who the author is, who write these, you know, stuff in the Guardian and Tribune, and then go and do your research and find out the truth. They cannot do it. They could waive it. They could waive it for 1 year, like they said. They could waive it. Like PLP said, we could waive it for 1 year. But trust me, the ramification for waiving that for 1 year will prove detrimental to this country.
That just goes to show how much we just like the fluffer stuff. We like how something sounds, but we're not actually thinking what's actually going on here.
Yeah, because it's, see, the thing about it is there are a lot of grassroots people, and I'm not saying grassroots people are uneducated, but there are more uneducated people than educated people.
You're right.
And so that's what they bank on. So all the people know is they need money in their pocket. And so that's why I could give you $500 for my vote. You know what I mean? And so I'm a big advocate for educate yourself. Read between the lines. Yes, it sounds good. Is it too good to be true? Or what would be the net effect? How will this affect us 1 year from now?
But it
I
takes
think
time.
the net effect, I think the net effect would then be introducing a new tax, because if you were to realistically try to reduce VAT, you have to replace that with something else.
Exactly.
Correct.
So
And
something
guess
else
what they're gonna
gonna-
say? Or we could be blacklisted. We ain't had no
Exactly.
choice. It's a good
Yep.
thing we give you all that year off. No, they know we have the lowest tax rate in the Caribbean. And they know that when they brought everywhere else is like 15%, 12%, and they had to they have other, like Barbados have like 3 or 4 different taxes. Okay, so they know, I think it's us in Trinidad that has the lowest tax rate. They know that by a certain time it has to get up to 15%. They know that. Okay, or
also-
we will be blacklisted.
And also too with that, as she said, Felicia, right? As she said, people talking ignorance about lowering the tax rate. Well, you can't even lower it because are we trying to be a part of the WTO inside that accession process or what's not that it's called? You know, customs duties and excise taxes will have to decrease since we want to be a part of that global body. So where's your tax base really gonna, you know, come from?
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna implement.
Loans at a higher rate, and we already in a deficit.
Exactly.
Right? Because
So-
nobody paying attention to the loans. So the government could go borrow them under the table, and the grassroots people in the know the government own. They can't even call off the number, right? $7 billion in loans. They ain't even gonna know.
And see too also with that, they're not gonna implement income tax. They're not gonna implement that. But you still have other tax bases you could tap on, but be just lazy on. Because with property taxes, a lot of persons don't pay property tax and been evading it for years, and they don't implement corporate tax. So just like you was talking about how the foreigners come and they set up their businesses, but they aren't being taxed. So that leaves room for a lot of, you know, leakages from the circular inflow of the domestic economy. But, you know, they aren't thinking.
But even when they right in, but when they come to, they are very savvy. This Hawksville Peak Agreement is that they don't have to pay no VAT, no tax. Hello, but any of us as Bahamians, I have a duty-free card, and I've been up to the Ministry of Finance at least 5 times, telling them, listen, when I order my stuff out of Spanish Wells is take off the duty. When I go in Harborside Marine say, no, they can't take off the duty, so you need to fix this, because why give me a duty-free card? And you know, I done been 10 times. I will go 20 times until I bought an engine. You know, the back on my engine was $2,000. And the man was like, oh, that was only 5% duty. I say, if it was 1%, I would have dropped it. 1%. You know what I mean? But people take it, you know, it's $2,000. You know what I mean? And so up front, these people are so business savvy that they know what to ask for and they know what to advocate.
They are,
you
and
know,
that's why I always would say that they
Go
would
ahead,
never, like
Miss
the
Liz.
outside. I would always say the international world will never take the Bahamas serious because we as a people, and no offense, we really aren't educated. And then the young people that actually try to speak up, they try to silence the young people and say, oh, well, millennials this and millennials that. So it's like, what do you do?
Yeah,
Why
you
can a
have to
foreigner
speak up
come
and you
here
have
and make way more than a Bahamian citizen? Why do foreigners get paid way more than we do? And when we demand
because we
what
don't
these
speak up.
deserve, it's a problem.
I agree with you 100%, Miss Lane,
It's
100%.
ridiculous.
It's foolishness, it really is.
No,
And then on
no
top of
way
that, we're talking
foreigners
about
come
taxes.
here making over $100,000 annually,
And they're not being taxed
can't
on it.
even make it.
But in addition to that, right, we're talking about taxes. When the taxes are collected, from whatever ways they decide they're collecting the tax, is the government really using the tax towards what it's supposed to be used towards? Are they really where's the accountability for exactly how much we've collected and exactly how much we're spending?
The money is being wasted because the things that they say they do, okay, they do it. They do it partially, halfway.
They spend it on sidewalks everywhere you go. You see
exactly.
Two sidewalks.
A double sidewalk, that don't even make sense.
Don't make no sense. Everybody
wasting
get a
money.
contract. Everyone
But
have a
again,
contract to build sidewalk. To build a
what we
sidewalk.
need, okay, and again, we need to pay attention to customers. I mean, to other countries. They have lobbyists in America. When you say this money go in this place, and they have investigative press, and I mean Clinton is trying to do it, but they hold these people accountable and they play it on the news and play it on the news, and these people lobbyists some lobbyists get paid in America. We don't have anybody here. We have Lincoln being standing up, calling off some stuff. He wants to be a political affiliate. What was the guy before? Who is a senator now? Yeah, they stand up. They had one march, and that's it. We don't have a lobby. Renard. Yeah, we need lobbyists. So we need people not to only sit down and talk. We need people to walk them through the process and say, hey, like be an auditor for the government. It's called a lobbyist, and we don't have that. And so I beg one of you to do a needs assessment on your country and see what other countries are doing and get these things going. Because if nobody's holding them accountable, all we do is talk and complain and say this and ain't right. That's what they need. Whoever is this new government or this government right now, we need lobbyists in place to hold them accountable. And that's the only way.
Ms. Bullet, all the governments is the same. I don't trust none of them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So you gotta
all
be in with the press.
They sit down in a circle and smoke their cigar together. I trust none.
Yeah, so they need to be monitored and audited daily. And so it's up to us as the people to like I say, to lobby for what is right and what needs to be done, because even if they get to a point where they do collect the money, oh God, can you trust them to put it in the right place? No, they'll still be talking about this consolidated fund 30 years from now. And you could never know where the money going or how much money in the fund and what it's for. Okay, so we are the future leaders. We have to make a difference, okay? Or our children will suffer. We suffering now. Okay, so stop talking, get your network together, get in these groups and get to know the movers and shakers and make a difference. No more talk. We're going on to chapter 4. Okay, good. All right, so chapter 4, short and sweet. It was a page, 2 pages, okay? And so again, we just looked at the 40 recommendations. We saw the OECD. We know the Basel Committee does a country rating. We know Transparency International does the country ratings as well as the Corruption Perception Index. We know how that affects us. So let me share the screen. I am going to, we should by now be familiar with central bank guidelines. And again, the first thing I do is check the date. This is the correct version. I'm looking at 2009. We going through it. We can look at the table of contents because this is 91 pages. And Bahamian legislative systems or anti-money laundering and terrorist financing legislative framework is on page 7. So I'm looking at all these pages. I go straight to page 7. There we go. Okay. And in the book, they have them listed. And this is what makes up the framework for anti-money laundering and terrorist financing and proliferation. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 pieces of legislation that makes up the framework. Okay, and so international standard, they have the 40 recommendation. IMF have some guidelines. Wolfsburg have some guidelines. OECD have some guidelines. Basel Committee, Transparency, all of that is covered in these 8 pieces of legislation that's pertinent to the Bahamas. So you should know these. Okay, so these laws outline the crime of money laundering. They outline terrorist financing. They outline which businesses are subject to AML CPF laws. They name law enforcement, the FIU, who is responsible for collecting SPRs and what have you. And so just again, so you will have a visual of what these laws look like. We know the central bank. So after the law, then there's a guideline from your regulator that we saw the central bank guideline. Let's look at the law. So again, we look at this law and I look in the corner, 125 pages, okay? But this is both the Proceeds of Crime Act and the Proceeds of Crime Act, we refer to it as POCA. And this tells you you're going to jail and what you're going to jail for, what you should not do, okay? And if you work in the financial services sector, when you the first day you start onboarding, they should give you a whole bunch of policies and procedures to read, because international standard, the regulators guideline, and then the company itself tailors whatever applicable from the law and the guideline to their company, and then they give you a AML guideline. So in that AML guideline, it should tell you two of the fines. Again, this is going to be on the final exam, probably as a multiple choice question. People always get it mixed up. Somebody wrote an entire paper on these two using the old law. Please make sure you check the dates. Okay, so we go to the table of contents, and then I need a reader who does not have their 10% yet, and they're gonna read tipping off and failing to disclose. Okay, so it's under identified. Okay, great. Identified risk offenses. So it says it's on page 19. I ain't getting caught up with this 125 pages. I'm going straight to page 19. Okay, so we'll see exactly what it says. So this is applicable to everybody who works in the financial services sector. Okay, and as we read, we'll see that the lawyers make a lot of money because it's not in layman's terms. Sometimes you need somebody to interpret, and so that's why you see different guidelines to put it in layman's terms and to explain to you. And sometimes the guideline isn't even clear. Ms. Bullitt is be like, what we should do? So don't feel a way about it. Another thing with these two, people get mixed up in terms of the fine. So if you look, failure to disclose is 13 and tipping off is 14, and then 15 talks about the penalties. You have to read it. It's a person who commits an offense under section 9 and 11. We are not in sections 9 and 11. We are in sections 13 and 14. And so that's part 1. Part 2 then says a person who commits an offense under section 12 to 14. We are on 13 and 14, so that's where it falls in. So a lot of persons do go and get mixed up with section 1 under the penalties. Incorrect. It's section 2. Make sure you know the difference. Okay? So my reader, let me pull it up. Go ahead. Failure to disclose by nominated officers. Just the reader still.
Or suspects or has reasonable grounds for knowing or suspecting that another person is engaging in money laundering or an identified risk activity. B, any information or other matter on which the knowledge or suspicion of the nominated officer is based, or which gives reasonable grounds for such knowledge or suspicion, came to him in consequence of a disclosure made under section 19. And C, he does not make the required disclosure as soon as is practicable after the information or other matter comes to him. 2, for the purposes of this section, a required disclosure is a disclosure of the information or other matter, A, to a focal point officer, or B, in the form and manner, if any, prescribed for by the Financial Intelligence Unit. 3, a person does not commit an offense under this section if he has a reasonable excuse for not disclosing the information or other matter. Tipping off.
Go ahead, tipping.
Tipping off. A person commits an offense if A, he knows or suspects that any disclosure under this part has been made, or any action has been taken by the Financial Intelligence Unit in relation to anything under this part, and B, he makes a disclosure to another person which is likely to prejudice any investigation which might be conducted following the disclosure referred to in paragraphs A1 or A2.
So then you have to go look back and see what A1 say and A2 say. So sometimes it's confusing you. So jump straight down to 2. The penalties for this failing to disclose and tipping off.
A person who commits an offense under sections 12 to 14 is liable, A, on summary conviction to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 years, or to a fine not exceeding $500,000, or to both, or B, on conviction or indictment, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 20 years, or to a fine, or to both.
Okay. Okay, good. So again, more than likely they'll be live multiple choice questions. Please go back in your own time and research. Start with the table of contents and Google POCA. You could Google the FTRA. Gives you all the laws that support your financial institution. If we look at the bottom, it says the Travelers Currency Declaration Act 215 as amended. And what happened is, in the Bahamas, when you travel to the United States, you have to declare whether you have $10,000 or more, or they can take your funds away from you. However, that's internationally going through the US, and that was a US law. A few years ago, my good doctor, and may her soul rest in peace, because she just passed away a month ago from the COVID. I don't know if you ever went through the domestic section to go to Canada or to Jamaica or to Cuba. Anybody ever traveled that way?
I did.
Okay, so going to Jamaica or Cuba to the domestic section, they do give you the form that you fill out and say disclose, but it's not the law. It's US law. And she went to the domestic section going to Jamaica. And in her suitcase, she had $220,000 cash. Anybody familiar with this story? No? Okay, so she had the $220,000 cash. And her husband was a doctor as well, but he was a politician. And at that time, Perry Christie was the prime minister, and her husband was a PLP politician years ago. And so they arrested her, of course, and said that she didn't disclose that she had this money. And so, of course, her husband immediately called Perry Christie, and they had her arrested. They confiscated the money, and they took her into the airport police station and arrested her, cost her the miss of flight and everything. And so Perry Christie called and said, release her. And so, of course, they made it political, and they said, oh, it's because she's a PLP, and PLP in government. Anybody else would have gone to jail, because on the US side, they had convicted, and a lot of people's money had gotten confiscated because they did not disclose the $10,000. Okay, so when persons found out that, hey, they really did not have a right, they released her, gave her money back, and then she was able to travel another day to Jamaica. They saw that's again a technicality in the law where it was only US. So what they did is they updated it now to include Bahamas. And so please do not go away in a group, in the church group, or the other day I was with my significant other, and the guy said, how much money do you have? I said, sir, can you speak quietly, please? So how dare you ask a woman how much money they have, and a significant other is there? I said, sir, could we talk about this somewhere else? And he's like, no, sir, ask her, make her write it down. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I pushed it there, and he still called it out. I said, sir, I don't believe you did that. Okay, so even if persons travel in a group, you still have to disclose, or you could be arrested no matter which side you are on. Okay, so please make sure. And women, I don't know how you're gonna get around the customs officer, because even though I wrote it down, I balled it up and I said, please don't disclose that amount, he still called it out. And so, of course, I couldn't get any extra money for shopping while he was there. But that's the split story. But you all do understand that you must disclose, or you will be arrested where you go on the domestic side or the international side. So they increased the law to include now, not only if you leave from the US, but if you leave from Bahamas, you must disclose. And some persons, they must be working with the casinos, because I read in the paper where, some guys came here, I think last year, just before the pandemic, they had come for spring break, and they had won $30,000, and they were going to Canada. And the father said, you're coming to the domestic side, we go to the Bahamas all the time, you don't have to disclose. And so they did not. They split the money up, and each person had $5,000. But for some reason, Bahamas said, he's calling and say this person, when they got the casino, because those 5 were arrested, and that money was confiscated, plus they were charged $15,000. And then somebody else most recently this year won some money. Again, at the Bahama, did not disclose, was arrested, and the money was confiscated. So please just disclose. And I mean, you can just disclose. And once you have a legitimate reason where you would have gotten the money from, then you know, it's fine. They don't take it from you. So there's no, you know, reason why you shouldn't disclose. But know that if in a group, everybody who's traveling with you has to say what amount they have. And if it totals to more than 10,000, it could be confiscated if you don't disclose. Okay, so you know, I didn't know Wesley had that amount. She didn't tell me. You know, I didn't know my husband had that amount or my wife. So, okay, just so you know when you want to start. Okay, so loads of information, very good collaboration, very impressed by the knowledge level in the class. Any questions or concerns? You're asleep or you're, this is too much and you're like to fall asleep halfway through.
We awake.
Okay, but good. Miss Bullock was awake the whole class too. I didn't fall asleep once. So yeah, thank y'all for keeping me up. Thank y'all for keeping me up. Sometimes I doze off, you know. So very good, very good. Okay, so any questions or concerns? And no interruptions today, no internet. Thank God for good internet, right?
I didn't want to speak too fast, but yeah, this is a good thing.
You had your fingers crossed the whole class, I see.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
yes, Sierra. Help me. I want to give Sierra, and she helped me out very good last week. I even had to use her cell phone. So, Sierra, Miss Bullock, good look out for you. If you need some help, let me know.
Appreciate it.
That's good. Okay. So, any other questions or concerns? So we talked about a lot of stuff, and I beg you to go out and not right after this class, because you know I don't want you to have message overload. I want you to be able to retain this, but I want you to, you know, apply some of what we said in your companies. Go out and do the checks and balances to make sure that you are protected. And then, like I say, you know, build your network, get your investment group. Some guys out of high school in Miami, they got together and they bought a house with all their graduation money instead of, you know, getting a new car or going on a shopping spree or a vacation. They took the money for their senior trip and they took the money for their graduation presents and they combined it and they bought a dilapidated house. I think it cost them about $90,000. And then they got a small loan to, I guess, fix it and repair it, and then they rented it as an Airbnb. And there's 5 guys that coming out of high school, and they said that was their graduation present to them. Okay, so there are a lot of opportunities right now. If you seek to be an entrepreneur, because I always say you need 5 revenue streams. You know, Ms. Bullet, sometimes I work 9 to 5, then I teach. Then I have a fishing company, you know, and everything goes in season, you know. And so if you truly, you know, I had to work 2 jobs my entire life. If, you know, if I wanted the luxuries of life, if I wanted my children to go to private school, if I want air conditioning just to pay BPL, is very expensive. One of my part-time jobs, my entire pay goes to BPL during the summer just so I could be comfortable. You know, and if you want to travel and go on vacations, you can't just get a loan every single time, you know. So you work hard and you play hard, you know, and it's achievable and it's possible. You increase your network and you support each other and we, you know, a piece of the pie is out there. There are loads of, like I say, right now, there's a grant from the Small Business Development Center, you know, and I applied for that person and we just applied. They took 5 months and they got it. Another person applied by Bahamas Development Bank. If anybody lives in Angleton and they have a business, they give you $2,000. Here's some paperwork, but you could get the paperwork done and you have to have a business license. And you could, I applied for 10 business licenses last week. But I told you all some of the hiccups that I've been having with these people, and I simply trying to help them, you know, get a piece of the pie so they could stop borrowing money from me. I say, when I get rich, no more loans, no more. Okay, so relax, enjoy your weekend, throw this book down, and then Monday through Friday, you go hard, you do your research. You see what opportunities are out there. Ireland are offering a grant right now as well. You only have to tell the NMA with the Bahamas Development Bank too. You haven't tell the NMA to apply. Apply. You'll be very surprised. This is an election year. By next year, May, they have to have elections. So after this, we truly ain't gonna see no opportunities and nothing from the government. So if you don't do it now, you'll miss the chance. Okay, so take some time to build up your revenue streams. Take some time to organize yourself so you could be like the Chinese and say, listen, this week we carpooling and we taking lunch because we saving one payday. And you will be surprised what a difference it will make. Okay, so go relax and have fun and go out on Monday. Okay, that's just my advice. I hope some of you take it.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so if there are no more questions or concerns, you'll have a fabulous weekend and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Miss Bullet.
Hi.
Where do I get
Thank you, Miss
the last week's class? Since this was my first one.
Who is it? This is your first one, Robin?
Yes.
Okay, so reach out to Miguel Pratt and he will have the upload. He can send it to you.
Miss Bullard.
Hi.
The FTRA guidelines, that wasn't in the central bank guidelines, correct?
FTRA is the law.
Right, but was that a part of the central bank guidelines?
Yeah, so central bank will guide you through the various laws. So they have a portion of all those 8 laws in the guidelines. So they'll say, as FTRA section this states, blah, 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 you must do this or that.
I think she asked because it's not, what we read from today is not attached to the initial email that we got, right?
Right, that's what I'm asking, where I could actually find
But
that.
the central bank, you mean the laws? No,
the attachment, the attachment that you were reading from
FTA
today?
guidelines.
Right.
This just says this is actually, this is not a guideline. Now you'll have to say the right thing. This
The
is
FTA with the recommendations then.
This right here?
Yes. Could you send that to us?
No, go and do research. Go right
They
here.
are on central bank website.
Okay, so look right here. Y'all check the laws because I believe the ones on central bank website are old unless they updated it.
I didn't see this. That's why I asked.
They
Okay.
recently updated it on central bank.
Okay, so because you should have subscribed to central bank already. So this is the central bank guidelines. You go to the table of contents, you see the framework, and you see the list of the laws, and then you Google them. Make sure you have the correct one. Okay? This is the Proceeds of Crime Act. Okay, and then if I scroll down, then there's the FTRA. I just have the 2 attached together. Okay, and then these are the FATF 40 recommendations. Again, you should have subscribed to the FATF site, and you could Google this and have this online. But again, when you get to intermediate, this is actually attached to the back of the book. But again, be proactive and get familiar with it right away.
But
okay, Ms. Phillip.
Yeah, but that document she just showed us is attached to the first set of emails she sent us. I just looked at it.
Okay. But
Yeah.
do research anything that you don't have. I want you to get used to doing your research and finding the correct versions and the correct dates.
Okay,
excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so have a fabulous week and I'll see you all next week.
Okay, you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye, same to you.
All right.